My best friend and wife destroyed my life, so I took revenge and ruined theirs. The perfect life that was a lie. For the longest time, I thought I had everything a man could ever want. A beautiful wife who I had been with for nearly a decade. A best friend I had known since childhood, more like a brother than a friend. A stable job that, while not glamorous, provided a comfortable life. I was the kind of man who valued loyalty over everything. I trusted the people closest to me, and that was my biggest mistake. Because while I was out there working hard to provide a future for us, my best friend and my wife were betraying me in the worst way possible. And I had no idea how it all started. Looking back, there were signs. Little things that didn't seem like much at the time, but make perfect sense now. Like how my wife, Sarah, started dressing up more, even when she wasn't going anywhere. Or how my best friend, Mark, was always around, sometimes even when I wasn't home. Or the way conversations got quieter when I walked into the room. But I was blind. I never thought to question it. Mark and I had been friends for over 20 years. We had been through everything together: school, relationships, breakups, job losses. He had been my best man at my wedding. And Sarah? She was the love of my life. The woman I had built a future with. Why would I ever doubt them? So I ignored the strange gut feeling. I told myself that I was overthinking things, that I was being paranoid, that my wife would never betray me, that Mark would never do something so low. I was a fool, because while I was busy working, planning, dreaming about the future, they were already destroying my life behind my back. The moment everything fell apart, I didn't catch them in bed. There was no dramatic walk-in scene, no half-naked scrambling. No, it was much worse. It was subtle, quiet, cold, and that made it hurt even more. It happened on a night when I was supposed to be working late. But thanks to an unexpected power outage at the office, I came home early. I walked in, excited to surprise Sarah, excited to finally spend time together after weeks of long hours. But as soon as I stepped inside, I heard them, low voices in the living room. I paused in the hallway, listening. I wish I hadn't, because what I heard, it shattered me. The truth, uncovered. You really think he'll never find out? Sarah's voice, my wife's voice, was filled with amusement. Mark chuckled. Ethan, please. He trusts us too much. That's what makes this so easy. My stomach dropped. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart pounding. Sarah sighed. I almost feel bad. He's a good guy. Yeah, Mark agreed. Too good. Too trusting. That's why it's so easy to walk all over him. Sarah laughed softly. You think he'll ever leave me? Mark scoffed. Never. He worships you. You could cheat on him right in front of his face, and he'd still find a way to blame himself. I squeezed my eyes shut. I felt sick, like someone had punched me in the gut and ripped the air from my lungs. The woman I had spent years loving, protecting, and providing for, mocking me behind my back. My best friend, the man I would have died for, laughing about how easy I was to manipulate. It took everything in me not to storm into that room, not to grab Mark by the collar and beat him to the ground, not to scream at Sarah and demand to know why. But I didn't, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to react. I was going to think. I was going to plan. And when the time came, I was going to make them regret every second of this. The cold, silent betrayal. I stood there for a long time, listening, hearing them talk about me like I was nothing, like I was some idiot who would never figure it out. And that was my breaking point. I took a deep breath, and instead of confronting them, I walked out, quietly, calmly. I got back into my car, drove away, and as I stared at the road ahead of me, I made a silent vow. They thought I was weak. They thought I was too trusting. They thought I would never do anything about this. They were wrong, because I wasn't just going to get revenge. I was going to ruin them. The first step toward their downfall. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I checked into a hotel. I needed time to think, time to plan. I wasn't going to be one of those men who get cheated on and cry about it. I wasn't going to let them walk away from this untouched. I was going to make sure that by the time I was done, they would lose everything. And it all started with gathering proof. Because if I was going to burn their lives to the ground, I needed to make sure there was nothing left for them to rebuild. The silent revenge begins. I sat in that hotel room for hours, staring at the ceiling. The anger burned inside me like a wildfire, but I forced myself to stay calm. I couldn't afford to act recklessly. Mark and Sarah thought they had me figured out. They thought I would either break down or confront them in some pathetic emotional outburst. They didn't realize I had another option. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to destroy them. And by the time I was done, they would wish they had never crossed me. Gathering the evidence. Before I could strike, I needed proof. It wasn't enough to know they had betrayed me. I needed to document it. I wanted solid, undeniable evidence that I could use to ruin them in every way possible. So I got to work. I installed hidden cameras and voice recorders throughout the house. I accessed Sarah's phone records and cross-checked them against Mark's. I searched for financial transactions, looking for any evidence of money being spent behind my back. It didn't take long to find everything I needed. Hundreds of calls and texts between them, many sent while I was at work. Transactions showing expensive gifts, restaurants, and even a weekend getaway I knew nothing about. And worst of all, emails between them, openly mocking me. Sarah, I swear, Ethan is so oblivious. He has no idea. Mark told you. He's always been too trusting. That's why this is so easy. Sarah, I almost feel bad. Mark, don't. He'll never do better than you anyway. They thought I was a fool. They thought they would never get caught. They were wrong, setting the trap. Now that I had proof, I needed to be strategic. I didn't change my behavior. I acted completely normal. I didn't confront Sarah. Instead, I played the perfect husband. I pretended to be even more trusting, letting them think they were getting away with it. They got comfortable. They let their guard down. And that's when I made my next move. I needed to hit them where it hurt the most. Sarah had always been obsessed with her image. She thrived on being seen as the perfect wife, the perfect woman. If people knew the truth about her, she would be humiliated. And Mark? He was desperate for success. He had been struggling in his career, and I knew he was working on securing a huge job opportunity. So I made sure to ruin it for him. The first strike, ruining Mark's career. Mark had been trying for months to get a lucrative promotion. He had finally landed an important interview, one that could set him up for life. So I decided to make sure he never got the job. I knew the company's CEO through mutual acquaintances. With a simple phone call, I arranged a private meeting. I presented everything I had collected on Mark, his cheating, his dishonesty, and, most importantly, his financial fraud. Because in my digging, I had found something even worse than his affair. Mark had been stealing company money. Not a lot, just enough to go unnoticed if someone wasn't looking closely. But I made sure the CEO looked closely. And just like that, his career was over. Mark was fired immediately, and the job offer he had been hoping for, rescinded. His reputation was ruined, and he had no idea it was me. The second strike, Sarah's public humiliation. Sarah loved being the center of attention. She thrived on social media validation, posting about her perfect marriage while secretly betraying me. So I decided to make the truth public. I compiled every damning message, every transaction, and every lie into a neatly organized expose. And then, I emailed it to everyone she knew. Her friends and family, her coworkers, even her boss. Within minutes, her phone started blowing up. I watched from the doorway as she frantically checked her messages, her face draining of color. Her entire world collapsed in real time. And then, she turned to me. Ethan, she whispered, her voice shaking. What did you do? I tilted my head. What do you mean? I asked innocently. Her hands were trembling. You sent this? I shrugged. I just thought people should know the truth. Tears filled her eyes. How could you? I cut her off. How could I? I repeated, my voice cold. How could you? She opened her mouth to respond, but I didn't care anymore. I walked past her, grabbing my keys. Where are you going? She asked, panicked. I turned back. Somewhere you'll never find me. And then, I walked out. The fallout. By the time I checked my phone again, my inbox was flooded. Sarah's friends had turned against her. Her boss fired her. And Mark? He was begging me to talk. Mark? Ethan? Man, I swear I never meant for things to go this far. Mark, please, let's talk. We can fix this. Mark, just tell me what you want. I didn't respond. Because there was nothing left to say. Watching their lives crumble. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of regret or guilt. Those emotions were long gone. No, I was awake because I wanted to see the full extent of the destruction I had caused. And from the way my phone kept lighting up with missed calls, unread messages, and voicemails, I knew I had succeeded. Sarah's reputation was in shambles. Mark's career was over, and they had no one left to turn to. But that was only the beginning. Mark's career completely falls apart. By morning, the news had spread like wildfire. People who had once admired Mark, who had seen him as a successful professional, were now avoiding him like the plague. I had made sure of it. The fraud accusations? They stuck. His former colleagues? They wanted nothing to do with him. The business world? Completely shut its doors in his face. By noon, I got a text from an unknown number. I didn't need to check to know who it was. Still, I opened it. "Ethan, please. I know I messed up, but you don't have to ruin my life over this." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "No, Mark. I really do." And then I blocked his number. Because he deserved this. Every single second of it. Sarah's world collapses around her. Sarah always cared about two things above all else: her image and her social circle. So when I tore both away from her, I knew she would break. And I was right. The day after the emails went out, she was officially unemployed. Her boss didn't want the scandal affecting the company's reputation. Her friends wanted nothing to do with her, especially the ones whose husbands and boyfriends she had flirted with in the past. Her family was furious, ashamed that their perfect daughter had been exposed for the liar she was. She tried to do damage control, tried to play the victim, tried to shift the blame onto me, but no one was buying it. And for the first time in her life, Sarah had nothing. Not her job, not her reputation, not even Mark, who was too busy trying to save himself to worry about her. They were both drowning, and I was watching from the shore, enjoying every second of it. Their first attempt to get me back. By the end of the week, I knew what was coming next. The moment they realized they had nowhere to turn, they would come crawling back to me. I just didn't expect it to happen so fast. I was at home, sitting at my desk, when my phone buzzed. "Sarah." I let it ring. Then, a voicemail. I hesitated for a second, then pressed play. "Ethan, please pick up. I know I hurt you, but we need to talk. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. I wasn't thinking, and I let things get out of control. But you and we've been together for so long. We can fix this. I know we can." I almost laughed. Fix this. There was no we anymore. The desperation sets in. When I didn't respond, the messages kept coming. "Ethan, please. I miss you. I miss us. Can we just talk? I lost my job, my friends. I have nothing left. I still love you. We can get through this together." Still, I said nothing. Because I knew what this was. It wasn't love. It wasn't remorse. It was desperation. Sarah didn't miss me. She missed what I provided. She missed being comfortable. She missed having a safety net. But she had burned that bridge the moment she chose Mark. And now, she was on her own. Mark tries to save himself. A few days later, it was Mark's turn. Unlike Sarah, he didn't even try to pretend to care about me. He got straight to the point. "Look, man, I get it. You're pissed. But you've made your point. You ruined my career. You ruined my life. I lost everything. So congratulations. You won. Now can you stop?" I read the message twice. Then I wrote back, "You think this is about winning, Mark? This was never a game. This was about making sure you paid for what you did. And now, you're paying." He responded almost immediately. "Ethan, come on. We go way back. We've been friends forever. You can't just throw that away." I smirked. "You threw it away first." And then, I blocked his number, too. Because Mark was nothing to me now. Just like Sarah. Watching them sink further. Over the next few weeks, things only got worse for them. Sarah, with no job and no support, was forced to move out of our house. She tried to rent an apartment, but with her damaged reputation and lack of income, she struggled. Mark, completely blacklisted in his industry, had to take a minimum wage job just to stay afloat. They had betrayed me, and now they were suffering. But the best part? The best part was still yet to come. Because while they were too busy trying to survive, they didn't realize I was saving one final blow for last. A final, devastating twist that would ensure they never recovered. The final blow. They thought they had already lost everything. They were wrong. I had been patient. I had let them suffer, let them feel the weight of their choices. But now it was time to ensure they never got back up. Destroying Mark for good. Mark was already at rock bottom, or so he thought. He had lost his job, his career, his connections. But I knew something he didn't. I had been digging deeper. And what I found, it was the nail in his coffin. Through some careful research and conversations with the right people, I discovered he had taken out multiple loans while still employed. Loans he lied about on his applications. Loans he had no way of paying back now. If the authorities found out, that was fraud. And fraud meant legal trouble. So I made sure they found out. I sent an anonymous tip with all the evidence I had gathered. A week later, Mark was arrested. And just like that, he was completely ruined. His name? Destroyed. His reputation? Gone. His future? Non-existent. And the best part? I didn't even have to lift a finger, making sure Sarah never recovers. Sarah had always relied on one thing: other people. She needed validation. She needed support. But after everything I had done, she had no one left. She tried reaching out to old friends, but they had moved on. She tried getting another job, but her reputation followed her. And then, she tried to find another man to take care of her. That's when I stepped in. Sarah had started seeing someone new. She was trying to reinvent herself, to act like none of this had ever happened. But I wasn't going to let that happen. So I did what she would never expect. I warned him. I sent him everything. The messages, the proof, the full story of what she had done. And just like that, he was gone. Sarah was alone. And for the first time in her life, she realized there was no one left to save her. Her last, desperate attempt. I thought that would be the end of it. That she would just fade away, disappear into irrelevance. But then she did something I never expected. She showed up at my door, looking broken, looking pathetic. For a long time, we just stood there, her on the porch, me in the doorway. She was a mess, her once perfect hair unbrushed, her clothes wrinkled, her eyes red and swollen. I waited. She finally spoke. "Ethan," she whispered, "I don't have anywhere else to go." I said nothing. "I know I hurt you," she continued, her voice shaking. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but She paused, swallowing hard. "I don't know what else to do." For the first time in our entire relationship, she wasn't confident. She wasn't smug. She was powerless. And me? I was completely in control. The moment I had been waiting for. I took a long, slow breath. Then I spoke. "Do you remember what you said to Mark that night?" Her face froze. "I remember," I continued. "You said I was too trusting, that I would never leave you." Her eyes filled with tears. "Ethan, you were wrong." And then, I shut the door in her face. I didn't shout. I didn't curse. I just walked away. Because for the first time in my life, she meant nothing to me. Walking away for good. Sarah didn't leave my doorstep right away. Even after I shut the door in her face, she stood there, knocking, begging, crying. But I didn't answer. I let her feel it. The emptiness, the helplessness, the realization that she had nowhere else to go. Because the truth was, this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about finally letting go. And I was ready. Mark's final collapse. I didn't check on Mark after his arrest. I didn't need to. But word still found its way back to me. His fraud charges stuck, and he was forced to take a plea deal. He lost every remaining contact, blacklisted in every professional circle. He ended up working a dead-end job, barely scraping by. The man who once mocked me, who thought he was untouchable, was now just another nobody. And the best part? He knew I was the reason why. I could see it in one final message he managed to send me from a new number. "You did this to me. I hope it was worth it." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I simply replied, "It was." And then, I blocked him for good. Sarah's new reality. Sarah had nothing left. No friends. No money. No future. After I shut the door in her face, she tried to stay in town. But nobody wanted her around. She burned too many bridges. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she moved back in with her parents, something she had always sworn she'd never do. For someone who spent her whole life climbing, trying to be above everyone else. This was her worst nightmare. And the most poetic part? She did it to herself. She had everything. She threw it all away. And now, she had nothing. The last time I ever saw her. Months passed. My life. It only got better. My business thrived. I built new relationships, surrounded by real friends. I finally felt at peace. Then, one evening, I ran into her. I was out with friends, grabbing drinks at a new bar downtown, when I saw her sitting alone in the corner. She looked different, smaller, like the life had been drained out of her. For a moment, our eyes met, and for the first time since it all happened, I saw it. Regret, not just for what she did, but for losing me. I expected her to look away. She didn't. She opened her mouth, as if to speak, but I didn't give her the chance. I turned my back, because I had nothing left to say, and as I walked away, I felt it, the weight of everything lifting off my shoulders. Because for the first time in years, I was truly free. They thought they could break me. They thought I would always be the one left behind. But now they were the ones stuck in the past. And me? I was never looking back. Because this wasn't just revenge. This was justice. And it felt damn good.
Did you like this story? Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more insane real-life betrayals, revenge stories, and justice served. Check out our other videos, you won't believe some of the twists we've covered.